In our first installment, we took you along for road tests in 8 cars that we both love and can actually afford to drive.
Each have strengths and weaknesses on the road, but now we're going to put them to the truest test of any car's performance, hot laps on our test track. Oh, and one more thing. This time we're trimming the field.
We're taking the road scores and going to combine them with the track performance, and we're going to send 5 cars packing.
Sorry Honda fanboys, but we have a problem. There's something just not right with this Civic Si. And I don't mean in general, I mean this particular car. It's 3 seconds slower than the Civic Si I tested just a few weeks ago. So we're pretty sure the motor's hurt. Maybe it's got a slipping clutch. We're not sure, but its performance is just way, way off. As a result, this car finished 8th out of 8 cars, which to some people will sound like dead last, but to be fair, had we had a healthy Si, it would have finished much higher in the order. So would the Civic Si have cracked the top 3 had we had a healthy one? I don't think so. It's still too soft, it's got too much body roll and too much understeer compared to the much stiffer competition here, but it's still a lot of fun on the racetrack, and I absolutely love this 6-speed manual gearbox. I was also surprised to see on the spec sheet that the curb weight of this car has crept up over 3,000 pounds, and that's just getting a little bit too heavy for an engine with this kind of power. So yes, the Civic Si did finish in last spot in this very competitive field of cars, but it's still a big improvement over SIs of the past, and I think with a healthy motor, who knows how it would have done.
The Juke Nismo RS. If this comparison test was about the most character, this would be your winner right here. We never really expected much from a crossover in this comparison test, but I think this car surprised a couple people. The 1.6-liter engine feels far larger than it really is, and it makes power that rivals a lot of the 2-liter turbos. These crazy aggressive Recaro seats here are great on the track, but on the street we found they're a little too aggressive, and many of us complained of a sore back after long periods behind the wheel. Nissan has done a great job transforming this crossover into a sporty ride, but that said, you're never going to overcome physics, and this high-riding crossover is never going to handle as well as the low-slung FRS. Coming in 7th place in this comparison isn't really that bad. It did trounce the Civic, and it gave some of the other cars a run for their money on the track. Even with a somewhat sloppy shifter, we wish Nissan would put all of this Nismo technology, including the engine, into the Versa Note. Now that would be a hot hatch.
Sure, the Miata didn't crack the top 3 overall, and in some ways it is starting to show its age, but around the racetrack, it's still an absolute hoot to drive. You can drive it with the rear wheels, you can drift it around a little bit, and although it rolls quite a lot, it does make a lot of grip. It just doesn't have the power of the FRS, so its straight line speeds aren't there, but in the corners, this thing is as much fun as any car you can buy. Really, my only gripe about the way Mazda has set up the MX5 is it's just a little bit soft. There's a lot of body roll, and that does hurt its performance around the racetrack. In fact, it was almost 2 seconds slower than the FRS. So although the MX5 really is a ton of fun to drive, because its lap times weren't that competitive, it dropped down into 6th place.
We're a little bit surprised that the Focus ST finished this far down, but I think part of the problem is the Fiesta ST. As fun as this car is to drive, it's lacking some of the rawness that its little brother has. The engine is by far the torquiest here, and it feels like it, and it makes a great noise when you're on throttle. And the handling on this car. Every time we drive it, we're impressed again at just how well Ford has made this ST handle. This may be the best handling front-wheel drive car in the comparison. So why is it only in 5th place? Well, like the GTI, this car's a little too refined and too capable. They've kind of dulled out some of the fun in the car to make it fast, and although it is one of the fastest cars on the track, you just don't have that grin-inducing smile you do in, say, the MX5 or the Fiesta ST or even the WRX.
I have to admit the GTI was actually my pre-event favorite. I really thought it had a shot at the overall win, but it finished just outside the top 3. And I think the main reason for that is that it just didn't quite tickle my fancy on the racetrack. It still has a bit too much understeer, and although this 6-speed manual is really nice, I think it does give up a little bit of performance to the DSG. I do really love the engine in the GTI though. It's a torque monster, and unlike the Fords, it doesn't suffer from any of the torque steer that those do. It's also a really consistent engine. It wasn't getting heat soaked nearly as quickly as the other turbo cars, so it was turning consistent lap times lap after lap. The GTI really is a beautiful street car. I love the interior, and I would own one of these to drive every day. Even though the GTI was 3rd quickest around the racetrack, because it's a little bit numb and just doesn't communicate to me as a driver, it fell back in the rankings to 4th. Five down and 3 to go, and what an interesting group it is.
Not only do we have front, rear, and all-wheel drive cars, but there's a sedan, a hatchback, and a coupe.
But which is the best performing car for under 30 grand? To find out, come back for episode 3.